All right, our topic for this final session is grammar, language, and voice. It's supposed to be a 30-minute session. We're 6 minutes into the session, and so if it were 30 minutes, that would be 10 minutes for each of those. So what can I do in 10 minutes for just grammar? Do you know how many of you are native English speakers? Do you know when you reached fluency in English? Scientists or linguists tell us that you do not reach fluency in English until you're 18 years of age. Okay, and so encouragements to some who are still learning learning English. It's a very complex language. I think it ranks up there with Navajo, as I understand it, as one of the most difficult languages in the world. I mean, who can really explain to somebody else the difference between present and present? Oh my God, it's a very, very hard language. And there's not much that I can do now in this short time, but it is very, very important. So I just want to stress that before we move on. Maybe you saw this graphic, it's in the handout that you had there. Punctuation is vitally important. Let's eat grandma. Or let's eat grandma. I mean, how you say that, how you word that makes it very, very different. It's important. Karen, you want to tell us the difference between it's and it's? Mm-hmm. Okay. It's is a pronoun, whereas it's is a contraction. IT apostrophe S is like don't, can't. You're dropping letters, so you put that apostrophe in there to show that you've dropped some letters. The other one, there is no dropping of letters at all. The one thing I think I can do, and I would want to do for all my students with concerns of grammar, is make sure that you have your grammar check turned on when you write a paper. I don't know how to tell you to do this because there's different versions of Word and stuff, but I literally get papers from my students and I think, oh my gosh, have they not even read the green squiggly lines in Word, which is going to tell you there's a problem, or maybe a problem. Who is putting those green squiggly lines there? Do you know? It's a computer. It's a database. It's not a person. So there are times when it's wrong, but every time there's something green there, you should look at it. A red squiggly line, what does that mean? There's something there that's misspelled, okay? So lots of times weird author names and so on are going to come up with a red squiggly line. Guess which name gets a red squiggly line all the time? Okay? That's my name, and the computer doesn't understand. And so if I right-click on that red squiggly line, it's going to say, did you mean... No, I didn't mean that. I know my name. Hello. Computer never answers. I don't know why. I think if you right-click and then say Add to Dictionary, it will add it to your dictionary and never get the red squiggly line again. But the green squiggly line is for grammar. This is a screen capture of an actual student's paper. I went into my archives for a student that had graduated 4 years ago to make sure that there would be no political implications of this at all. This one is underlined, this whole sentence. When I right-click on that, and I'm sorry you can't see it that very well, but I don't really see what the problem is with it. I think it says it's a fragment, which means it's not a complete sentence. And the only thing I think is there should be a word in here, the word BE, which is missing. And because that word is missing, it thinks it's a fragment. But I don't even know that I would have caught that. when I was grading it. But anyway, anytime you see a green line, make sure that you right-click on that. With your mouse, you have a left button and a right button. Okay? And then, okay, here's some red. And then here's another green one here too. Culture in urban neighborhoods affect consumption patterns. Can a student tell me what's wrong with that? Culture in urban neighborhoods affect consumption patterns. There should be an S in either one of two places. Anytime there's a prepositional phrase, like in here, you can just drop that out. So culture affect or culture affects or cultures affect. And that's verb agreement. Again, I'm running out of time. We don't have time to look at each of those, but if I right-click on it, it's going to tell me that. What you mean here is either cultures affect or culture affects. And you just have to decide which one you mean. But it's giving you a clue. There's something that's not right here. So please make sure your spell check and your grammar check are on, and that will help a lot, okay? A couple other things that just to highlight, and there's no end to this, but oftentimes what I see is students that are overusing capitalization. There's even an example of that on the plaque out here for the statue. It talks about coconuts. The coconuts that are used in that statue that's out here in our lobby, and it's a capital C. There's no reason why that should be capitalized. Italics, I also see a lot of students that are overusing italics, particularly when they want to emphasize something. And although that might be okay in a more informal kind of writing, it's really not okay for us. It's just really, really rare that you should be using italics in formal graduate level writing. Numbers, spell them out. You can use figures for numbers over 10, and never, I don't know how many times I see this, never start a sentence with a number. Like 95 students went on the field trip. You write that out, 90-5 students. So if it's at the beginning of a sentence, isn't that right, John? I thought so. Every time some students do these things, I think, have the rules changed or something? I thought you were supposed to learn that in... Anyway, language, can we talk about that a little bit too? Language, how you write, how you construct your phrases and express yourself. Dr. Bronkema did a great job talking through sentences and that kind of thing, but I just want to highlight a few other topics. First of all, formality. Again, this is graduate level academic writing, and it is a bit more formal. And like I said to you in my first presentation to you, please do not write conversationally. Please do not transcribe your thoughts. In our last session, Dr. Bronkema was talking about using transitions and signposts. You don't do that when you talk, but you have more time now to reflect and to think through what you're trying to say, how you're getting from one paragraph to the next, transition from that paragraph to the next. So you are thinking more about it. You are being more formal. Okay, jargon. You want to think through maybe, are you a part of an in-group or something, and there are certain words that you would be using that are not really acceptable for graduate education, graduate academic writing. Can you anticipate any problems in this area? Certain jargon that you might be using that really shouldn't be used just because of the formality and the erudition of your assignments? Isn't that cool? Use a big word like that. I think for a lot of us, it's going to be like Christian lingo or Christian jargon, I mean, we're a Christian university. We believe in Jesus, all of that stuff, but in formal academic writing, you really shouldn't say something like, I was so blessed to read this author, or something. You just don't, that's stuff you would say in church and all, but you really shouldn't use that in our formal writing. Are there other examples you can think of? Again, there'll be a lot of examples on the OWL website if you want to get into it a little bit more. But just look at your words, yeah. Yeah. And you do want to be writing for a more general audience, academic, even something like MPO or NGO. I mean, we all know about, a lot of people don't really know what that is. And you want to make sure that you're communicating. So don't just make assumptions that everybody in the world understands what you're talking about, even though your professor does for sure. Uh-huh. Yeah. Now, if you're transcribing a conversation in literature, research, and somebody that you interviewed says, I'm so blessed, well, then you want to put that in quotes and use that. But try to avoid jargon. Try and avoid slang as well. You think of any slang terms? That kind of depends on what culture you're from, but if you're writing about a pro and con kind of a thing, or you're doing some investigative research, you don't want to say, well, I hate to spill the beans in this paper, but don't say things like that. That's slang. Those are ways that we informally talk to each other. You don't want to say that. Or, I read author so-and-so, and his ideas smelled kind of fishy to me. How about this one? Well, you may not really believe what I'm writing here, but let me tell you, I would never pull somebody's leg. Those are slang terms that please do not use. I'm sure that you wouldn't even think of that. But I do get a lot of words really and like. Like how some of us say like every other word. You get that in papers too. Deceitful language. This one might be not quite so obvious, but you just want to be careful that you're really stating the case. And I want to use some military terms here, and I'm not trying to diss the military in any way, but say, for example, you're writing about war or something, and you talk about the collateral damage from an attack in Iraq. That means that probably some civilians were killed, and collateral damage is kind of a military speak that doesn't really convey the people lost their lives here. Okay, so it's not really being straight up front here. Also, we'll talk about soldiers dying in a friendly fire event. Well, it really wasn't friendly. It was fire, I guess, in the sense that somebody was firing a weapon, but you probably want to be just a little bit more strong there and just say, soldiers on the same side engaged one another and so died. Just don't try to use clear language. Another thing that's very important for us in Eastern University, and Dr. Watson was just talking about this as well, is justice. You want to use words that are inclusive, that express no stereotypes or biases whatsoever. It's very important for us to use words that are inclusive of other genders and other races. And I have had to go to some students and say, we don't talk like this. We don't want you to graduate from here using this kind of language and stuff. Now, if you're, again, quoting somebody or something, that might be a different matter. But can you give me an example, maybe some of the professors, of a misuse of gender that you've seen in a paper or something? Uh-huh. Yeah. Right. Exactly. That's a very good example. So instead of male nurse, what would you want your students to write? Yeah, if it's important, and it probably really isn't. Right. Okay. So things like that. We want to be inclusive of people with disabilities, and you know, just the standard politically correct things to do this day and age. And we aren't doing it because it's politically correct, but because we do believe that we want to include all people. So avoid stereotypes, sexist language, that kind of thing. This next topic, voice, is a little bit dicier. Yes, voice generally refers just to active and passive, and we'll be covering some other things here as well. Yes, Peter. So you're saying that, for example, with the military examples, friendly fire or collateral damage, that is how they talk. Those are terms that are used. So, yeah, I guess if you could use it, but I would probably put it in quotation marks or something, just to kind of flag that you understand the use of language that is going on here. In our day and age, we talk about spin. Okay, we talk about marketing. We try and communicate in ways that will persuade or bring people over to our side. And you're probably not going to hear a military person say, "We really blew that. We should not have bombed that village." Or "We did get our targets, but there was a lot of collateral damage." I mean, yes, I understand that the military uses those terms, but it's it's kind of misleading, really. In academics, you want to be really on target and getting at the precise point. If you can think of another example for me, we could talk about that as well. Right. Well, this is where, if I can take us back to our very first session on Friday night, understanding your audience and what kind of writing it is that you're doing. If you are in the military and you are writing a report on a friendly fire incident, you should probably use that term, friendly fire. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about your papers for classes and academic writing. And precision is very important, and getting that point across and nailing that argument is important. Even just listening to you talk, and you were explaining this other scenario of blue on blue and blue on red, I'm thinking here, as I'm trying to anticipate what you're saying, I don't know what blue on blue is and blue on red. So for the general audience, they probably don't understand that. Now, you can explain it, but put it in quotes and explain what blue on blue means. If you're writing a paper on world history, Dr. Granby Sabukwa, when she was here, talked about the Russian Revolution. And, communists enjoyed the red color or something. And you say, well, in 1917, there was a red on red event that really turned the... I don't know what you're talking about. So for general academic writing, you need to be a bit more precise. Okay? Any other questions? We're doing just great time-wise. All right. This is the last slide, really. It's kind of complicated, though. This is an area where I struggle a lot, too, particularly active and passive. I don't know why, but whenever I write, it's just 80% of the time it comes out passive. And that's why I just love grammar check, because very often the computer will tell me, this is passive, consider rewording, is what they say. But anyway, let's talk about the first thing there. You want to use active, objective, punchy language as much as possible. And by punchy, I don't mean like wild adjectives, but I mean direct, active language. Say what you mean. Okay? Most often, now professors, you can back me up here or challenge me. My understanding is we don't use first person in academic writing. Now this morning, Dr. Simeo said to use first person, but remember, he was talking about journalistic writing. And so we are not talking about journalistic writing. In your papers and so on, I would say avoid it as much as possible. Maybe in a reflection paper or something, because you're reflecting, it might be acceptable, but I would still try and do it in third person. Yeah? Yeah. 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 Or I will show. Well, yeah, you're writing something, so even show. Not just I, but yeah, you are trying to show me something, aren't you? That's what the assignment is. So try and use third person as much as possible. Passive voice. Don't use it. I mean, that's standard. You want to use active verbs rather than passive verbs. This is a passive sentence. This paper shows that ethics is important in leadership because, somebody want to wager why that's passive? Or is it? This paper shows that, I don't know that that's passive exactly, is it? Yeah. So that is an active verb, would be passive. Okay, yeah. Anyway, I think what this slide is trying to get to here is that this is more active, this is more direct than this is, okay? You can even leave out that first part. Ethics in leadership is important. It is important because, okay? And also past tense. Past tense, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this. I think it's okay, but in some contexts, but I think what they're recommending here is a present tense, is what you want to. Okay. That slide, I think, is confusing a little bit. I apologize for that. But I think largely what you want to do is to avoid first person. And if you need practice or you need help, make sure you're always watching for passive uses. You don't want to do that. Sometimes you have to, but you want to be active as much as possible. Okay? Somebody want to give me an example of an active and passive? Caleb did a moment ago. One of my tutors. Something that maybe you see a lot. I'll be the guinea pig, something that I'm doing here, something that's passive. The microphone is held by the professor. That's passive, right? Because the microphone is passively receiving my action. Okay, can you make it active now? Or the professor holds the microphone, okay, rather than the microphone is held by, okay? I'm not going to spend too much more time on this because, frankly, it's an area that I struggle a lot too. I don't know why is that we, or maybe you don't have that we come out past it so often. I enjoy writing. I love it, but it's an area that I struggle in. Yeah. Okay. All right. So that's your whirlwind tour in about 30 minutes of three really, really big topics. Grammar, language, and voice. Very important topics. What I want you to go away with is not feeling overwhelmed, but really to leave and enjoy creating and writing. That's what you're being offered the opportunity to do when you have a writing assignment, is to create something, to contribute something to the larger body of knowledge out there, to gain practice in writing. So I hope you can enjoy and embrace the task, and that our writing here has been, the workshop has been helpful to you. Any final questions or comments? Anything that wasn't unclear before I unleash you into an exercise? Okay, the exercises are rather informal because I think this is one of the hardest things to work on. As I was trying to come up with an exercise for you, it was like, what, write a bunch of bad sentences or try and think of some ways that you can really screw up a sentence or something. So what I've done is on the Blackboard website, I have posted a few links for you from the OWL website where if you need a bit more practice with active and passive or grammar or something like that, then you can practice with those. Let me take you there. So what you're going to do, hopefully this hasn't kicked me, you'll go to the enhanced group here and down here to our Friday session. So there's some exercises there on grammar and on punctuation and also on paraphrasing. This is something that you might like. Okay, and this is something that students are tripped up on a lot too. Say there's a really nice quote in an article and you want to incorporate that into your paper, but it needs to be in your words, right? Either in your words, or what do you have to do? You have to document it somehow, put quotation marks around it. So there's a few excerpts out of various articles, and they challenge you to put those into your own words or to paraphrase that. So I'll just let you do what you need to work on. Why don't you pair up even maybe a little bit early with your tutors and see what you need to do. You could even do these exercises with your tutors. When you go to an exercise, like say you go to the grammar exercises here, and there's going to be a variety of different ones that you can do here, whether you should use an adjective or an adverb or articles, prepositions. If you were to click on prepositions here, and I'm sorry about this view, I don't know how to change this down to make it smaller, but here's an exercise on prepositions: to, toward, on, into, and if you scroll down to the bottom here, it says go to the answers. So tutors, maybe you could go to the answers and your students could walk through those, or If you have other projects that you're working on, I'll let you do those as well. So up to you how to best use this time.